like 2 weeks. That's a long time, man. I can't remember the last time I actually did that. Probably apart from when I was ill. The only, but if when I've been healthy and I haven't been going down on anything, generally speaking, it's a daily thing, like every day, relentlessly. So yeah, it's well done you and taking that detox. Anything change? Like what happens? I mean, mentally or anything?
No, not really. No, I mean, I like working, so it doesn't make any difference. Do you know something? This week, I've done probably about 16 meetings or something with people this week, and probably 12 of them are just like giving people advice on stuff. People have contacted me saying like, what do you think I should do about this or whatever, from some which have been, yeah, I know how to give you the answer to that, and others which have been, I have no idea how you deal. I am not qualified to deal with the circumstances that you're facing right now, so
you're like a roving advisory person on any topic. If you rent an opinion, just
I can help them. I can help them with their talent pipeline questions. I certainly can't help them with their upcoming court case and their substance abuse. Jeez.
Right. Yes, fair enough. Mate, I feel this all the time. People ask me for meetings, and I feel fundamentally unqualified to give input or advice. And in fact, so much so that I actually wrote this to a founder today. I said, listen, the reason why I won't take this meeting is because you're going to believe too much of what I say, and you should not do that. Because you over-index on what I'm going to say, and it's like not what you want to do. You want to just like go on your own path, and trust your own trust your customers, trust your team. You don't want outside people giving you sort of their opinions when actually they're no more or less qualified than you are to do that. Even though obviously, these days there's probably a little bit more prominence in terms of, who the heck I am and stuff. But fundamentally, this guy knows how to drive the car better than I do. So I shouldn't be advising him. So yeah, it's weird, man. It really is strange.
I'll tell you a couple of quick ones. Sorry, really quickly. So I've got 2 customers this week. So I'm not going to work with any more than 5 between now and August. But I've got 2 customers both this week, totally different. One's an enterprise company or a talent pipelining. The other one's an HR tech business. But this guy contacted me to say, just like to catch up, caught up with this guy. And I was absolutely gobsmacked with the creativity of what he's planning to do. And it's in an area which is very traditional, and it's an entire reverse thinking on something that we're looking at the wrong way. And I hadn't realized we're looking at it the wrong way. And it is like, what the hell? We're all looking at this the wrong way, and in a very, very big area of candidate generation, basically.
Right.
I've just spoken, really said nothing there, so it doesn't matter. Ignore me.
That's fine. I know you got to be careful not to blow his big idea as well. But it sounds interesting when you've got that type of angle. It's always good to get people that sometimes are a little bit distant from recruiting as well coming into it, because they'll often have a very, very unique perspective that we in the bubble won't be able to see, because we're always talking to each other, we're always having those things. So it's almost like sometimes you need an ignorant outsider who looks at it with a fresh pair of eyes and says, hang on, why don't you do this way? And it's like,
you're right, this guy is bang in the middle of it, but you are right that works as well. Absolutely. I spoke to somebody else today, a few days ago, who's come from outside, and totally much better thinking than we've got inside.
We should probably engineer that a bit more, like cycle people in specifically. A certain percentage of people doing startups in recruiting, I wonder,
has 10%. To be in your gene pool.
Yeah, it has to be exactly that. It has to be not the genes; it's in the ideological gene pool, if you like. To just sprinkle it in, because we just get more creativity. Anyway, folks, let's get on with the show. Welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on Air, bringing it to you every Friday, no fail. It is episode 194, and today we have got a very, very exciting show for you today. Actually, a very important one, and it's sadly important because it is something that we need to pay attention to, the state of the recruiter job market. So if you are a recruiter and you're looking for work, or if you are an employer and actually hiring recruiters, what is the market actually saying? We've obviously had a very chaotic really 2-3 year period. There's a couple of prominent people I know. Last couple of days, I've had conversations with good friends, prominent people have had to close down their businesses, sell their businesses because they weren't able to continue. We've had people lose jobs. Just now, before I came on, someone just messaged me, said, "Hey, Hung, guess what? I'm on wave 4. I finally made it. I'm now on the market." And it's like, yeah, this is happening. So this is the reason why I want to do this show, folks, to give everyone like a very good perspective. We've got data people coming in, labor market economists coming in, community intelligence coming in, and we've got job seekers who've been recently on the market coming in. Hopefully from all of those perspectives, we'll be able to weave together a real picture as to what the recruiter job market looks like. Anyway, before we kick off, let's just sort of make sure the sound checking is all right as usual. So folks, if you can hear me okay on Crowdcast, please do let me know. Just ping me a comment in the chat stream there and let me know whether the audio and visual is okay. We should be broadcasting this live on LinkedIn. I hope the heck we are. I think I'm there. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, do let me know whether you can hear and see me okay. I'm here looking at a black screen here, so I have no clue. Just send me an emoji or something on LinkedIn. Let me know that that's there. We should be live also on Facebook and Twitter. I made the effort to actually hook us up on Discord as well, and I've failed on that. 100% guarantee it. So sorry for the folks on Discord, but we were broadcasting everywhere. So it looks like people can hear and see us okay, which is great. Okay, cool. Let's just bring. So firstly, we gotta welcome our sponsors. So every week, folks, Brainfood Live is sponsored by a company from the community that basically likes what we do so much that they say, you know what, Hung, you got to keep having these conversations relentlessly. And this week, we've got Horsefly Analytics, one of the UK's outstanding pioneering companies in talent intelligence. And I know they're pioneering because I've got like American people talking about Horsefly Analytics. So they are a remarkable business for the size they are, for where they came from and what they're doing. And they're sponsoring the show. And in fact, Mike Bassnett is actually one of the folks. Bassnett Sandy Ford is actually one of the folks who's going to come join us and do some demoing and searching of the platform to give us some live data later on. So he's come on, but he's going to come on now because he might as well do the sponsor message. Let's bring Mike on and we'll kick Mike off in a bit. Oh, he's done this, hasn't he? He's just failed to put his second name in. All right, so there's 4 mics. Two of them are actually in attendance. I'm just going to go for the top one. Whoever that mic is, just accept
emoji. Yeah, an actual horsefly emoji.
I think this is the day where the wrong mic is going to turn up because I think whoever the mic is, the mic will say, "Oh, I was hoping for someone else."
Oh, imagine the wrong mic trying to pitch Horsefly.
It'd be interesting.
Do you remember that very famous BBC interview where some fella came in for a job interview? And the people mistook him for a guest as an expert, a guest panelist. They got him on screen and they were talking to him as if he was actually the expert on topic whatever. And it was just some fella turning up for a job, like for an IT job or something. And it was just the most hilarious thing. I think it's on YouTube now if you want to search for it. It was a classic. But one of these days, folks, quite right, Daniel, one of these days someone is going to turn up that shouldn't be on screen. But I can safely say Mike is definitely the right mic. So welcome on the screen, Mike. Thank you so much. You're going to come back on. I'm going to take you off and bring you back on. But whilst we've got you here, can you quickly tell us what Horsefly is? Why should people care? Who should care about it?
Well, everyone should care about it, really. I think, so first and foremost, Horsefly is a real-time labour market insights platform. We've been running for 7 years now and pulling data from across the web. And yeah, look, we started here in a rather chilly UK, but now offering insights on a global scale, covering 58 regions, giving insights on anything from supply demand, gender diversity, ED&I, one of the latest modules that were released last year, which has been something which has been really well received. Competitor analysis, skills analysis, and we're supporting a mass range of organizations from SMEs right the way to global corporates, RPOs, recruitment businesses with insights to make better decisions, basically.
Yeah, so talent intelligence tool. So typically, what kind of person interacts with the tool, and what's the context in which they would actually, use Horsefly?
Yeah, crikey, you could be here for a while. I mean, we work with such different user groups, and I think there's no right or wrong. We work with sourcing teams, which are using it to guide, hiring manager and stakeholder conversations from a TA perspective. We've got talent acquisition teams, which are, branching and doing some of that workforce planning. But then we've got the teams doing the real strategic workforce planning, looking at the skills they need in their organization for the next 3 years, looking at location strategies. We've got organizations looking at the whole real estate aspect of what they do, and where do we put offices? Do we set up hubs? Do we relocate people? Do we hire in different areas? So it's a real myriad of people that we support and work with, which ultimately makes it a really interesting job. So
yeah, fantastic stuff. So listen, Mike, that's amazing. Where could people find out more about Horsefly? What is the website? Can you whip it into the chat stream there?
Yeah, I will do. Yeah, horseflyanalytics.com. Loads of use cases, lots of information there. We're on LinkedIn, obviously, as well, and social channels. And follow us, follow myself and some of the other guys. Lots of interesting stuff being posted around how you can use data and why you should be using it.
Fantastic. And you're coming back onto the screen, Mike, to show us exactly what we're talking about when we start doing recruiter searches. So one of the things I want everyone else to do, by the way, is think about a search that you want Mike to perform. So in other words, if you're a recruiter looking for a job, what information is going to be useful for you? If you are an employer looking for recruiters, what information would you actually like to draw from? Horsefly Analytics, one of the leading talent intelligence companies out there, they may be able to provide you with that information. So put the request into the either the chat, actually put it in the ask a question feature at the bottom, and we'll go to them and make sure people do it. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, which I think about 80 of us are. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, just put it in the comment thread. What is the search you want Mike to carry out? And we'll do that live on screen when it comes in. And I promise you, it will be like, a Google Bard style snafu, obviously. But we're gonna do what we can, Michael, aren't we? All right, listen.
Yeah, just with that caveat though, Hung, look, we'll only be able, obviously you're going to have so much time to run so many searches. I've got a few bits prepared already, but look, we're happy to run searches for anybody that wants to kind of reach out as well. So if we don't get it covered today live on air, then please drop in. We'll happily support and give you a report on the role you're looking for. So
that's actually a really good idea. So listen, obviously with live sort of conversation, we might not be able to do it all in organized time, but Mike is going to do the search for you anyway, even if we can't get it done today. So that's an amazing offer. All right, Mike, listen, go and have a cup of tea or something. We'll bring you back in a bit.
Cool.
Everyone's talking about Horsefly right now. Like loads of people are talking about, Horsefly is absolutely everywhere, but horseflies themselves are bloody horrible creatures.
I was going to say, I've never asked Will, the founder of it, like why do you want to name it after a creature like this? But
they're pollinators, like all insects, they're pollinators. That's good, but apart from that, they don't serve a purpose I enjoy.
No, and they're like midgy type things, aren't they? Oh, they're bigger actually. They're a lot bigger.
They bite you. Yeah, they sting you or bite you. I don't know which it is, but it's bad.
Yeah, you need to rebrand into like something cuter, Panda Analytics,
Koala Analytics.
All right, no worries. We'll bring back. All right, let's get on with a quick newsletter review. Adam, I'm not sure whether you had the time to see. Actually, you haven't, because you've been off. No, you haven't opened your computer, have you? So
no, we've done this together for like 18 years, and I've never not read it. Okay, so but I think let's do an abbreviated version, because actually this episode of the show is really important. So I'll just do a couple. Yeah. First is your poll. Who's going to win the AI race? ChatGPT got 54%. That's probably because most people had never heard of any of the other options and don't know anything about it. ChatGPT may or may not. Nobody can actually answer that question. That was just a name recognition poll.
Yep, I agree.
That's my view.
It was exactly what it is. And these polls are just opinions. I mean, no one's doing research on it, but I want to get the sense as to what the feeling is. What was interesting, though, was that ChatGPT was the first mover, and that's the power you have as first mover, because it's very dominant in people's minds. And because these products are competitive in the sense that they take time to use, you would not typically run multiple prompts across all three of them. They end up becoming like search engines in the sense you might default to a favorite you go to, and that may be the one that sticks with you. So very interesting battle between Google Bard, New Bing, and ChatGPT at the moment.
So the link between that and one of the Brainfood articles is that I think one of them was to do with Google and its share price tumbling and stuff like that. Now, the headline was that it did it because it made a mistake in the live demo of its product, but that isn't why the share price tumbled. The share price tumbled because the question around this new large language model impacting Google's standard business model and what's going to happen with that and the potential cannibalization there. That's the big thing. That's the big unanswered question, because Google's had the same type of thing for a long time. It's just never made it public. And the difference is that OpenAI is a fixed profit or limited profit organization, which is not trying to compete with Google or any other, Microsoft or anybody else in terms of the profit aspect. So therefore, it can turn its outsides it can turn its insides out. Whereas Google is going to have to do that now, and the impact on the classic business model is the question.
I think there's another layer to why this is problematic, because you're absolutely right. The reason why Google have been sitting on it is because it fundamentally it's a competitor to the ads product. Yeah. They want people to sit on search and misclick on a few ads and discover new stuff through advertising. I think 90+%, maybe actually less. They got something on the other tools, but at least 90% of revenue for Google is on ads. And Bard is a competitor for that. Additionally, is another issue which is really interesting, is that there's a sense that conversational AI type interfaces might just stop you from searching further. And I've noticed this myself. Like if you type something in and you get a satisfactory answer, which the reason why people are so satisfied is so excited with it, because it is providing satisfactory answers. You then take that answer and think, all right, that'll do. You're no longer then going to other websites and looking at it from there. So I'd be very interested to know what the overall web traffic levels are once these tools become very widely mainstreamed. I think all web traffic is going to go down, every single website. And if you think about that, that is fundamentally going to change how the internet's going to look. And it's really exciting on one side, but it's kind of an epoch shift on another. Sourcing, holy crap, that's where it's going to go completely different, because most of the data that we source from is actually on the web. So if the web cannot be supported by ads anymore, because no one's actually visiting these sites, no one's actually, by the way, we're all privacy mania right now anyway, so ads are less effective, then a lot of these websites are simply going to go down because people aren't going to maintain them for the sake of it. Therefore, that's going to change the amount of data that's available for us to actually search via a search engine. It's going to be really, really interesting. But anyway,
I remember reading the book about the early days of Google, and they went into pitch Google maybe as an acquisition opportunity. I'm not sure, to one of the big media companies like NBC Universal or something like that. And the CEO, Les somebody, he was a famous media guy, like traditional media guy. He went absolutely nuts, slammed his fist on the table and shouted, "You're fucking with the magic, the magic of traditional media." Well, Google must be looking at OpenAI and slamming their fists down, because they're messing with their magic now. So it's going to come full circle a little bit.
They've got the two original founders back in hammering out code. I mean, that's how it is. They've literally got Sergey back in trying to tinker with it. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how fast it's happening. Anyway, we're going to do ChatGPT next week, folks. The final episode. It's going to be ChatGPT part 3, ethics and concerns. So here is where we're going to illustrate ways in which recruiters have been using ChatGPT P3, and then we're going to say, what's the ethical issue here? What's the legal issue? What's the ramification? Stuff that you've brought up yourself, Adam, in terms of like the legality of it and whether there's permission based. And JP Morgan, for instance, earlier this week has just banned ChatGPT in there from their employees because they're concerned about compliance.
Major RPO that I know, like one of the top probably 3 biggest ones, has said you're not using that. And when asked why, it was because you're not using robots to do your job for you. This is like anecdotally I've heard from somebody that works in this business in a job where this person absolutely knows.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
no real answer. That's not a real answer.
No, it's not. But I think that we need to explore those things. So make sure you join the show next week. Okay, let's get on with today's show because this is even more important. Recruiter job market. I mean, you and I obviously. I don't know whether you've been looking, or obviously you haven't. I mean, you're beyond being a job seeker these days, I guess, Adam. But from your sense, I mean, do you have any perspective with regards to what the recruiter job market looks like at this point? 12 months or so ago, recruiters were obviously hot to trot. Where are we now?
I do. And actually, I spoke to somebody earlier today who told me it is really tough out there. You've got to be creative with the ways you're going about like approaching your search. You've got to use your network. You've got to use your little black book. You've got to position yourself in a way whereby you're going to be able to deliver more than 100% of what a traditional recruiter can do, because you're bringing tools, you're bringing skills, you're bringing, higher productivity. And so, yeah, I mean, my knowledge is it's anecdotal, but I can't wait to find out what the guests, enlighten us about.
Let's go with anecdotes first. And by the way, I'm a big fan of anecdotes. I don't mean for that to seem as if it's any lesser. I actually think it's hugely stronger. But I'm going to bring on Octave, who's recently got a job, which is amazing. But he's obviously been on a journey. He was with us when he was made redundant. Remember, a couple of weeks before Christmas, just at the wrong time. So he's going to come and join us now. We're also going to bring on Emma Mirrington as well, who is, of course, the CEO of the firm. Which is a huge network of internal recruiters. And I guess from there, I'm guessing Emma must have surfaced up some sort of intelligence there in terms of what they're saying about what the market is looking like. So let's bring on Octave and Emma. There's Octave. Firstly, hello. Congratulations, Octave, on the job, man. Well done, mate.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And now I'm just going to say, once again, a massive heartfelt thank you for bringing me on board the first time, and then all the support. And it's a very weird time indeed, and everything helps here. So nice to see you again, and nice to see you, Adam, as well.
Great stuff. Okay, Emma's here as well. Let's firstly, actually, Octave, why don't you introduce yourself first? Who are you? What it is you do now? Because you've got a job. So
I can say that, yes. So for everyone else that doesn't know here, so I've just recently joined PetApp as a talent lead. So I'm effectively just going to build the talent function from ground up here. PetApp is a tiny startup with about 23 people and massively growing. Just about to kind of hit that hyper growth type of stage. But what we do with a combination of Salesforce for vet clinics and, let's say, a mix of Babylon Health for pet owners and bridging the two. So it's a pretty exciting new platform. If you have pets, you'll know about the issues of owning a pet and having it, taking it to the vet and all of this kind of stuff. So that's the problem that we're trying to solve.
Fantastic. And great to see you, Emma, as always. Wonderful to have you on the show. Emma, for the few people who don't know you, would you like to introduce yourself real quick? Who are you? What it is you do?
Sure. Thank you, Hung. And hi, everyone. My name is Emma Mirrington, and I'm Managing Director of the firm. We are a membership organisation for talent acquisition professionals, so providing the sort of support that you would expect from a membership organisation: research, tools, templates, training, etc. I'm really pleased to be here today. Thank you.
Great. And loads, I'm really interested to dive into what the firm has been telling you in terms of what the market is. But let's take our attention to Octave firstly, because you've actually been at the coalface. Take us through it. You were made redundant from Sneak, I believe, 2 months or so ago. And you were on the market ASAP because obviously you got urgency. Octave about to have a baby for the first time, I think. Need to get the job, right? So tell me about how that felt and what the job search felt like for you. What was the sense you got?
So, I mean, we've spoken about the psychological issues that kind of go through, and that changes from person to person, and that affects everyone differently. I won't, let's say, dive too much on that, but it does affect you. In terms of what I found, so I've been made redundant 3.5 months ago, at the end of October, essentially, and it's been. I think I've got just the beginning of the wave of redundancies, and then things kind of picked up along the months that came just before Christmas, but also after. So it's been a very odd and very stressful type of challenge to kind of face, because you look at companies that you, let's say, really admire. You want to apply for the jobs. You reach out to people there, and then a week or so after, you go and find out, hey, they've actually cut their talent teams. They've actually made redundancies as well. So it just became a bit of a weird catch-22. Like, where do you apply? How do you apply? How do you go from being without a job to trying to find a meaningful conversation? And I found that, the network has been incredibly supportive. I mean, without the talent network, both in London and the people I know and work with, but also many other people that just reached out and said, hey, I really feel for you. Everything really, really helped. And even with the interviews that I've had, people were very sympathetic about the situation. No one really slammed you for, hey, what are you looking for next? Why are you looking to leave? Well, obviously, I've been redundant, so I need a new job. I was asked that, like, why are you looking to leave? Why are you looking to move into a new job? Well, I don't have one. So you get all sorts of silly questions sometimes, but the predominant feeling was support. There was lots and lots of support from people.
Can I just say that I don't believe one of the biggest problems in talent acquisition right now is like forecasting. What are my team going to be working on next week and next month and in 3 months' time? And that's because there's so much disruption right now. And so what you just said is, like, your network was really vital. There has never been a more important time to be to use your network and your little black book and be a member of things like the firm. And it is just so important, so much more important than it ever has been, I think, with the amount of disruption that we're facing in the world.
It gives you a competitive advantage. I mean, I see any network as literally a web, and it's a web of information, basically, or a web of information flows. So if you've got a thick and dense web, then you're going to have more information, and that's going to give you more chances of making a better decision than someone who's like hanging off the one strand. I think that's a person at high risk of being like cut off. You don't want to be that person. And of course, the time to build network is when you don't need it. But we often neglect it so much. But please just get involved in communities. You're in sort of Brainfood here. We're going to do the link share in a minute. Make sure you do that and then connect with everyone. Make sure you continue these conversations. Octav, how many interviews did you have to take? I mean, what was the ratio? Do you record any of this? Give us some numbers here.
So I've applied, I think, to probably over 50 jobs at least, the very, very least. Most of them I've never really heard back from. I've had about 5 interviews or 6 interviews with different companies. Some would go for, let's say, under the level that I was on. Some would be a bit just about there. But yeah, it's been a very interesting scenario. I've tried different types of roles as well. So more like just focus on sourcing. So yeah, it's been a bit weird, but yeah, about 6 or 7 companies, let's say, that I've spoken with directly and kind of gone in past, let's say, that initial interview.
So you would say there was actually jobs to find. So 50 jobs, I guess, where did you find them? But you're telling me that your applications didn't get a response most of the time.
Yeah. So the typical places, like the job boards that I've used, were LinkedIn and Otta. But then you'll see that once a job came live, everyone has alerts, of course, because we all know how to use those these days. You'll get like 300, 400 applicants, and that's just LinkedIn. And I bet that there were lots more on an ATS, going through careers page, going through directly to the poster, going through pretty much any other avenue. And I'm seeing this now on the flip side of the table, because I'm putting a job advert now up for anything, and I get approached on LinkedIn, I get messages, I get emails, I get applications through the actual ATS. So there's a variety. So when you see like 300 applicants on LinkedIn, probably there's going to be a lot more than that.
Yeah, so overwhelming applicant response, that's going to stop the ability for recruiters who haven't got a system that can scale in responses to just get back. So unfortunately, it's a CV black hole scenario for us. That's really, really interesting. Okay, Emma, let's bring you into this conversation. What's the atmosphere been like within the firm? And have you got a sense as to where people are feeling about what the market's looking like for the internal recruiters?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I think it's so sector specific. So obviously, when you look at the tech sector, they're having some real challenges there. And I think you talked in the past, Hung, about a K-shaped recession, and I think that's starting to appear. So I was speaking to a discount retailer the other day, and they're booming, lots of TA vacancies because people are choosing to buy down, in effect. So that's been really interesting to see. I think candidate experience is still quite poor from a TA recruitment perspective. So similar to what Octave's mentioned, but I spoke to a couple of people the other day. Again, one of them had, and these are heads of TA roles. One had applied for 50 roles, one had applied for 30, and each had heard back from about 10 organisations. So candidate experience is poor, even at more senior levels. I think the other thing that we're seeing is sort of the whole hybrid working ratio coming into play. So people are really not keen to be on site more than sort of 1 to 2 days a week. So it'd be interesting to see if we do sort of any analytics, if that sort of if that shows in terms of application numbers. And when we just launched our salary survey, we saw that at the moment 76% of the respondents are working hybrid patterns. So that's sort of something that we're really sort of seeing come into play too.
And there's a discrepancy there between the sort of the percentage of on-premise jobs, isn't there? Because basically employers are essentially going a lot more towards on-premise, and there's basically a dissonance between what employees want.
It's so true. It's we're seeing sort of very much the rise of the employee voice amongst the community, where people really don't want to be back on site full time and are quite sort of clear about that. And that's producing a challenge for TA leaders in terms of how they can ensure they sort of bring the teams back on site and recruit people who will be in the office more than sort of the 1 to 2 days a week.
Yeah, I'm bringing you back in, Octave. I mean, leaving aside the personal situation with PetApp, but the jobs that you saw and applied for, like, did you get a sense, what percentage were flexible in terms of work, or what percent were, hey, we're back to the office? Can you commentate on that?
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. And I've seen quite a few where they were looking for people to join on site 100%, and they would close it to say, actually, no, our CEO wants our people to be back on site now, and this is the matter of the role. This is the requirement. If you want to take it, take it. If not, not. I've seen that in two businesses, two big businesses actually, and they said, no, we're not having hybrid anymore. We don't want to give people that option anymore. But on the flip side, I've seen a lot of highly, let's say, remote or remote first type of businesses, and they just said, yeah, we're happy to hire anywhere. But then that opens up the market completely to a lot of people. So it's just, people who want to be, I don't know, it's a bit of a tricky one, but people who want to go on site, they'll find that. But then if they go on remote roles only, they'll have to, let's say, compete against every other candidate in the country. So that's, it's tough.
Very, very interesting. So basically, it seems like the employers are asking the candidates to compromise on their optimal and saying, look, do you want to, and using the advantage of the abundance to say, right, if you say no, the next person is going to say yes because people need jobs. So there's a big battle on here, and I totally get it. As a job seeker, you might just be flying into the teeth of competition if you went for those juicy remote only roles. And you've got to get your game into play because you're right in the middle of a very competitive situation. Whereas an on-premise position is going to have less applicant flow. You got a better shot. Simple as that. So we've got to make those type of strange compromises there. Okay, very interesting. Emma, you mentioned things.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Can I just quickly say that I did notice in the newsletter there was this whole conversation around remote and working on premise doesn't ever slow down. Probably 50% of the items in this week's newsletter were on this subject, and some of them were very conflicting messages, such as one guy who said startups that worked on site together were growing 3.5 times faster than those that weren't, and it turned out that was a little bit of smoke and mirrors in there, but it just doesn't ever stop, this conversation.
It's contended. I mean, and I think you can make an argument on either side. Maybe there is a pattern coming through, and I don't want to sort of insert my own view here, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. But basically, I think if you're very, very early stage, like where innovation is key, and you don't know what you're doing, you haven't got product market fit, etc. You're that stage, then I think jamming everyone in together 24/7 probably makes the most sense because there's no gaps in terms of being able to do stuff. You'll be able to just do things much more quickly. I think when you've got to the point where you know how to make money and you've got customers and it's a matter of scaling or it's a matter of incrementally growing, then that's when sort of remote makes more sense because you're not really having that level of innovation intensity anymore. You already know how the cash is being made. So your aim at that point is just more efficiency, which part of it is how you hire people more quickly. So I think there is something to be said about the stage of the business in terms of where it's at. I think if you've got a major organization, let's say, I think Octavio mentioned a lot of the big organizations where there's a lot of like organizational complexity that's difficult to manage in scenario because there's actually a big scheduling challenge when people aren't in the same building, therefore aren't in the same time zone, therefore aren't in the same sort of mindset. Then I can totally get it. If you're working for an enterprise, you're going to get the whip and say, okay, you're back in. I think hybrid is basically going to be chipped away. We're going to see a lot more on premises than we did in 2022. We're going to see a lot more remote than we did in 2022 because certain companies have hybrided and they'll make the decision, they'll just get rid of the office. And then that middle hybrid bit will squeeze, I think, ultimately to be less popular than it has been. So anyway, that's my view. Okay, what's happening with salary, folks? Is it up, down, everywhere? I mean, again, 12 months down the line, we were getting 25% uplift. Recruiters are earning 200-300 grand in ridiculous amounts of money. Is that happening, Octav? Have you made yourself rich, or did you have to think, okay, 12 months or so ago I would have said no to this, but now I've got to say yes because actually it's competitive compared to what I'm seeing?
It's not trying to divulge too much, really, but I think the salary market has changed a bit. It's definitely gone down. And again, you look at the market economics here, we have so many people applying for so many jobs, for a very finite number of jobs. Companies will try to pull down on that level of salary. I've seen even like 30 to 40%, for example, cuts, which is massive. And I said, no, thank you. I know where I stand. I know what my qualities are, what the skills I have can bring to you. And it's just a matter of keeping to your guns, basically. But I have seen a lot of companies trying to lowball just based on the amount of recruiters out there. But it's not that bad, though. I would say typically maybe a 10 to 15% cut. That's around the level. It kind of feels in line with all the other cuts that are being made, to be very honest, but it's not that bad. I mean, a 10-15% cut from a previous salary isn't necessarily the worst. It's not great either, but it does pay the bills. It still puts you in a good place. Maybe in 1 year's time, we're going to see that that boom again, and we'll see where things go.
especially in your market. Again, Emma, sector specificity is important because obviously tech massively inflated those salaries, were leading the way, especially with VC money coming in. But we know that VC money has literally gone the opposite way over the last 12 months or so, and seems to be continuing down that downward trend. That's simply less cash that goes into hiring people. So yeah, we might need to reset our expectations there. Emma, let's go to you on salary, because obviously you got a salary survey going on. Where are we with that? Have you completed it? Have we got any information?
Yes, we have. We've just completed it. So I'll give you a copy, Hung, so you can share it in Brainfood for everyone to access.
Amazing.
And it is really interesting, not just sort of the salary piece, but also things like, retention bonuses. We're seeing, I think if I had a theme for 2023, it is about retention. So people are investing a lot in their internal TA teams. We've seen some organisations sort of implementing sort of their grow their own schemes, but sign-on bonuses, loyalty bonuses. We've seen coming in for sort of more senior niche roles too, which is really interesting. So yes, fascinating to see.
Did you see any, can you commentate? Are you prepared to commentate on any broad trends in terms of where salary levels are compared to the survey last year? Because I think you do it annually, don't you? So...
It was 5 years ago, actually, that we last did the survey. So yes, of course, they've increased. I think I won't go into detail on today's call because I haven't got the sort of the data from 5 years ago, but I think sort of the thing that we are seeing is the sort of the increase in rewards and also expectations. The other thing that was really interesting to see was less than 28% of respondents want to stay at their company for more than 2 years, and that actually drops to 52% for 5 years. So you've got sort of a sort of discrepancy there where organisations are really focusing on retaining their TA talent, but the internal TA talent is not necessarily wanting to stay at the organisation. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out.
How interesting. Did you capture any commentary on as to why that was? I mean, did you give people a way to tell, to explain their decision making?
The rationale, so the top two reasons, unsurprisingly, are salary and career progression. I was surprised because the whole hybrid sort of flexible working piece was actually sort of midway down in terms of sort of one of the reasons. I would have thought it would be higher, but it's still, salary, career progression.
And it just goes to show, doesn't it, that employers have to focus more and more on talent development, because this train, which is people needing to move employer for career progression, never stops.
Yeah. And there's evidence for that. If you're looking at it from an individual point of view, you should look to move every 3-4 years. You shouldn't hang around 6-7 years, because basically you're suppressing your compensation if you do that. And that's the sad reality. You pop out, you get 20% increase, whatever it is, and then you trade back at a higher level. That's, if you want to be completely transactional about it, that's the way to do it. So yeah, unless businesses respond to that, maybe salary transparency will help at some point to give companies a little bit more awareness as to what they could and should be paying. Maybe that's going to help with retention. Who knows? But it's obviously a major thing. Okay, folks, listen, we have to move on because we're flying through this the time we have. Please hang around, Octave and Emma. We're going to do some searching on Horsefly in a bit. And we'll hopefully be able to bring in some questions as well that other folks will be able to answer. So, Octave, great to see you on the show. Thanks for joining us. Emma, great to see you as well. Make sure you share the link to the report. I mean, if you want people to register or whatever, just don't matter. That's okay. Just stick it into the chat stream there and on LinkedIn. I'm sure people will be very interested in getting a copy of that. Okay, we've got to move real quick. Folks, we always do this in the middle of every show. This is a point where we talk about networking again. We've got to make sure that everyone is walking away from this conversation with a much stronger network than they did when they walked into it. Brainfood Live, it has to come off air. The conversation should not stop with us, though. So take a moment, folks. Grab your LinkedIn URL and share it in the chat stream on Crowdcast. If you're watching this anywhere else, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, wherever it might be, take your LinkedIn URL and share it in a comment, and then make sure that you connect with everyone else who has done the same. There's a a couple hundred people watching this. So if you did this, if everyone did it, you're going to walk away with 100+ connections of people who are interested in this topic, with whom you can then have a conversation afterwards, or at the very least, you can continue to have some sort of network build in these pressing times. So make sure you take advantage of this.
Can I just make another suggestion around that? See if you use anything like recruiting like Crowdcast or WhatsApp or anything like that for any communities. I highly recommend putting your first and surname on there, because if your name just says John who, people don't. You might make a brilliant comment, but you're not benefiting from the social capital because nobody knows who John is. It's the same on WhatsApp and elsewhere.
You know what? I couldn't agree with you more. First name, second name. You got to own it. Even if you've got a long name like some folks have here, Lee Candioti, I know he's there, but just type it in. It's going to save you. You're going to save minimal amount of time simply by truncating that. And get your face up there. Like the amount of people on Crowdcast here, which I don't expect it because people don't hang around here, but it would probably help if you uploaded your photo there on screen, the photo you use for LinkedIn, for instance. So yeah, well done there, Gary. There's a few people doing it now. All the ugly mugs. I hope you don't mind me saying Steve and Gary, but get your pictures on. That's going to help, basically, help build brand. Okay, let's bring on some of our market economists, folks, because we have Mariano. I think he's back from Brazil. Is he there? Yes, he is. And we also have Tony. I think Tony's with us. Let's get some broader information in terms of where we're at on the job market. Always excited to speak to labor market economists because I don't know anything about it, but they do. And it's educational for me to figure this out. There he is, Mariano. How are you doing, sir?
Good, thanks. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're very, very well. Mariano, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, so I'm Mariano. Hi, everyone. I'm an economist, labor economist, really. And I've been working for the last few years in different tech companies. So I was at Indeed for a while at the hiring lab there. I worked at the LinkedIn Economic Graph. And more recently, I was the Global Talent Intelligence team at Amazon. So I've been working with labor market research for close to a decade. So yeah, really happy to talk you through some maybe of the European level trends that we see today.
Fantastic stuff. And we see Tony there as well. Tony, welcome back to the show. You're a favorite on Brainfood Live. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hi everyone. Hi, Hung. I'm Tony Wilson. I'm the director at the Institute for Employment Studies. So while the clue's in the name, we do research and analysis and consulting around anything to do with employment, HR, and labour markets.
Fantastic stuff. By the way, Tony's Twitter is amazing. He's really, really good at breaking stuff down. He's a must follow on there. So, Tony, why don't you share your Twitter on the chat stream as well? It's one of the places where I get this information.
I'm better on Twitter than LinkedIn, so I'll do that.
Which is a crazy combo when you think about it. It's a surprising switch. Okay, you've heard from the recruiters, folks, and I know you two are not like specialists in the staffing market per se, but with some of the commentary that Octav and Emma were talking about, did that resonate in any way in terms of the wider context of where the work was, where there seemed to be like an excess of candidates, competition for jobs, suppression on wages. Is that what you're seeing out sort of in the wider sectors, or is it actually quite specific to the staffing sector that we're in? How do you read this? Why don't we go with you first, Tony? Seeing as you're UK focused a little bit more, what's your thoughts?
Well, I'm really interested to hear what Mariano thinks as well, because I've been quite struck in the conversation that it's not really what we're seeing in the labour market more generally. We're still seeing quite similar issues to what we've had in in the sort of post-pandemic period, which is interesting for people sort of listening. You've probably got two hats on. You've got like your hat as a talent acquisition professional and looking at your own market, and your hat as somebody trying to help clients to fill their jobs. And I suspect, comments earlier about things like, people not having the right skills for the jobs. So, somebody's put a comment in the chat about, online being like trying to use a fire hose to fill a glass and stuff. I mean, I think probably a lot of people with with vacancies at the moment are probably still not finding the candidates that they want, rather than not being able to find the candidates they want, rather than finding there's too many. So, but you know, I really think the labour market is changing, and it's changing really quickly. You know, again, the example given about tech jobs is a good one. We're seeing a slowdown generally. A slowdown is, we're also seeing quite a lot of changes in the sorts of work people are doing. We talked about some of this already around hybrid in particular, and how technology is changing how we work. And I wonder if many of you working in this industry are kind of the canaries in the coal mine, that, you know, you're experiencing first what we're going to possibly start to see in more professional jobs, a wider range of professional jobs over the next year or so as the economy starts to slow. But also, I mean, it's been a real boom time, hasn't it, over recent years and over the last year or so. So maybe part of it is a kind of a rebound from that as well. And it's firms cutting back on stuff that they previously, you know, desperately needed, and now they're kind of trying to make savings. I don't know.
Yeah, well, again, it's not only there's two verticals really. It's recruiters, but there's also recruiters in technology. And again, I'm using Octave as an avatar here. But truth be said, a lot of the people who've watched this are from sort of those particular fields. And in fact, there has been a massive surge of recruiting just immediately after the lockdowns era went. We had a massive surge of hiring, and then of course we had a recorrection when the world kind of went crazy with results of the war in Ukraine, which kind of reset everything. So a lot of the excess hiring, if you like, over the last 12 months has now been shed, I believe. And we're now kind of dealing with a different investment environment as well, which again makes people a lot more defensive. Mariano, you want to say something?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I 100%, you know, plus one to what Tony said. There is definitely, you know, like a bit of a disconnect between, you know, maybe some of the, you know, experience, which obviously, you know, like some people are like going through, especially like in the tech sector, especially in some kind of like verticals, like, you know, recruiting, you know, human resources, like being one. But once you look at the macro, you know, like at the labor market data, actually, you don't see very much of that. So what you see is definitely a little bit of a softening, like a slowdown in some of the metrics. And that's, for example, even more pronounced in places like the UK than if you look for continental Europe. So at the Eurozone, or countries like France and Germany, which actually have some really strong, you know, labor market indicators at the moment. So Q4, you know, we saw actually higher than expected employment growth in the Eurozone. It came at 0.4%, more than forecasted, expected. You have one of the lowest unemployment rates on record. This translates also into a market that appears to be quite tight. So as Tony was saying, we do still hear a lot of reports from companies of difficulties of like filling jobs. I think hospitality, you know, being one place where they're struggling. I heard the term like vibe session, which I don't like particularly, but to some extent, you know, maybe by proximity, by seeing some, you know, some of that, you know, some of those layoffs being maybe concentrated in industries that we are close to, we extrapolate and think that that's going on across the board. That's not really the case. So having said that, though, I also agree that looking maybe, you know, 6-12 months in the future, we'll see like a bit more softening. So we'll see like some of this like strength in the labor market is going to just like weaken and decrease. Labor market tightness will come down a little, probably stabilize back to, you know, what we saw perhaps like before the pandemic. What we won't see, I think, and that's, you know, that's, I think for the best, we won't see like spikes in unemployment that we saw during the pandemic in the US, or, you know, like in the post-2008, like global financial crisis in Europe as well. It seems that there's been a shift there. So the labor market this time is like dealing with this, you know, shock, like in a much more resilient way. Also because, you know, we are like in the middle of like some trends that were accelerated, like aging, you know, like workforces, for example, retirement in the UK. I know Tony has like a lot of like research done on that, but early retirement, like missing workers. So that can like change, I think, like maybe some of the rules of the game a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of like my take on what's going on also like in the rest of Europe.
It's a really interesting message, and actually an optimistic one, I feel, because I think you're right. We may have over-indexed on VC-backed technology firms simply because they're so dominant in our mind space. You know, we use all these technologies. We know Google, we know Amazon, we know all of these products, and we think, yes, these are the best indicators, but they're actually quite unusual companies. And in terms of their overall contribution to the employment of people, it's comparatively low, even though the numbers sound enormous.
Yeah.
So I think the total amount of people that have been let go for VC-backed startups in the US is something like 200,000, which sounds like a massive number. Certainly not insignificant. But in terms of the absolute numbers of people in the US, it's actually not that big. It's not exactly a tidal wave of redundancies, and it turns out that a lot of those folks are able to shuffle into other roles very, very quickly because of the high demand. So if we're hearing from other sectors that actually demand is still high, that means recruiters might need to think about those other sectors as places to go. So if you're sitting there and thinking, you know what, I'm a tech recruiter, I'm in VC back startup, okay, great. Be prepared for lots of competition and be prepared for maybe a longer job journey, because lots of people are competing for fewer jobs there, but there's still tons of hiring that needs to be done. For companies saying to you, oh, I can't hire catering staff, guess what? They're going to hire a recruiter to help with that. So you might need to just reset, what you're looking at in terms of the industry sector and have a think about that, rather than hang around too long in a sector that probably has a little bit of ways to go and may actually have permanently recorrected away from a decade's worth of crazy growth. So I think optimistic, but you've got to make compromises. Okay, sorry, Tony, you're going to say something?
No, I was going to say I agree. I mean, I think this has been a really sort of high growth industry, but also one where there's been a really significant mismatch between skills supply and demand, which has inflated wages as well as been a lot of unfilled vacancies. And now we're seeing quite a significant correction. But on that point about, it is real. The slowdown we're seeing is real. I mean, and you'll know this because you're experiencing it. Like, there's been a really significant increase in redundancies in technology jobs, but it is a really small number. Like in the last quarter, there were 15,000 people laid off from technology jobs. Well, there was about 100,000 redundancies in total. And, the labour market supports 30 million jobs. It's a massive, so it's a very small number, but historically, there's just not really been many layoffs. There's not really been many redundancies at all in technology jobs until you go right back into kind of recessions. So it's definitely, it's a real correction we're seeing, but we're still seeing a lot more demand than supply in a lot of other professional services, financial services, in all sorts of consulting jobs, in all kinds of jobs that are still professional and pretty well paid. And it's how we can support those transitions that's important. It's a real challenge. You talked about some of the bigger drivers of this too, like the aging population is a really important one. Like, and people's changing expectations of work. People want more flexibility. They want more choice around where they work and when they work. They're more likely to be needing some flexibility because of their age or maybe their health condition or other factors. And all of this kind of plays in as well as how employers are having to think differently about how they work and how they recruit and how they design their jobs.
Didn't I read the other day? Well, why am I asking the question? Because I did read it. I know the answer. I read this article about sort of trying to explain where the missing workers were, the early retirees guys, which both of you would know. And it turned out the vast majority, according to this article, the vast majority of these early retirees were actually fairly wealthy, middle-class folks that had their own homes, that essentially, had solved, if you like, the long-term financial issues. It was just a matter of, look, do they want to keep work grinding away for another 5 years or just stop now? Because what's the big difference? So they weren't exactly people that had to continue to work. They just took it because they'd already found themselves in a pretty good position.
No, that's right. And it's a bit of a red herring about early retirement generally. We've all got really fixed on kind of why have older people left the labour force? And a lot of older people did leave for early retirement. But actually, most older people who are out of the labour force aren't retired. They're out of the labour force because they've got a health condition, because they're caring for somebody, because they can't find the right job. There's all sorts of reasons why people will be out of work. Retirement isn't that common. And people once people have made the decision to retire, they pretty much always stay retired. But the bigger issue here is a long-term one. It's not really a COVID one. It's that we are all getting older. There's 1 million more people in the UK. There's 1 million more people aged in their 50s than are aged in their 20s. And that's continuing to and that change is continuing to accelerate. And that youth labour force is getting smaller too, because people are staying in education longer. So the youth labour force is about one quarter smaller than it was a decade ago. So and not enough employers, and probably not enough recruiters either, are even just measuring some of the data on this. They're not thinking enough about looking at who's applying. What are the ages of those people who are applying, and the ages of people who aren't applying as well? Why aren't we getting more applicants who are older? Not just why are older applicants less successful? And what are the things that may hold people back? And some of it is about skills. A lot of it, though, is just about people's understanding of what a job involves and how they might be suited for it. And if people put off because of the language it's used or the way jobs are designed, there's a lot firms can do. There's a lot we can do to make jobs more inclusive for older people in particular.
Yeah, and a problem with a lot of jobs is that they do tend to have a template, don't they? Like we have an expectation as to what the person should be doing this job. And if the person doesn't fit that template, the recruiter, I've been that recruiter, you just skip. You think, no, we want this is the mental image that I had. And you're just going to keep shooting for that. And in fact, there might be lots of people that would be available to be able to do it. And I think that's going to be one of the problems with the older population that may want to work, but find themselves frustrated to get back in because the perception might be they wouldn't want the job. They've already had too much seniority. The salary expectation is too high, et cetera, et cetera. And actually, that person may be very flexible on all of those things, but you haven't gone so far as to ask them to do that. So yeah, very, very interesting. Oh, by the way, what Tony's talking about there is age dependency ratio, right? It's basically the dependency ratio between the numbers of people in the country that are dependent on the folks that are working. And that ratio is kind of just going in one direction. Basically, everyone's getting older. The aging population means that the cohort of individuals that are dependent is actually increasing compared to the ones that can actually support. Obviously, that's a crisis. Mariano, go ahead.
Yeah, really quickly, I just wanted to add on that, saying that, so even though like the rest of Europe, we do have, different labor force participation rates. So the UK has, I think it's among some of the highest out there, but we didn't see the same like trend in some other European countries. So we didn't see this bunch of missing workers, so like lower overall like labor force participation. So I think we saw older people kind of like working more likely to be in work after the pandemic in the rest of Europe. Part of it is like by design because of like increasing like retirement age. I think there is also like a conversation, by the way, like since we're talking about that, in France, like right now, there's like talk of like labor pension age, like retirement reform. There is also like a conversation there whether like this scheme like still makes sense, for the like a labor force of 2023. So do we need to maybe like rethink both kind of like from a company policy and also like a public policy perspective, some of the way we think about retirement? Maybe it's kind of like too old school to think of it as, either you're working or not, it might be more of a spectrum, maybe more of a transition period where people maybe kind of like phase out of the labor force. We do see sometimes like some of that maybe with some like self-employed like professionals. We do see a lot of like older people also wanting to work until longer, but maybe that doesn't work for others. So some other people would want to retire like earlier. So I think that's like a very interesting conversation that both, like private and public can have.
I would love to see experimentation that way because it is a binary thing, isn't it, right now? It's like, okay, you're working or you're not. And if you stop working, we'll pay you a pension. But if you're working, we won't. And it's like, hang on, why don't we just like do some sliding scale? If the person is working, a lot of people don't work 50 hours a week. If you take it down to 20 hours a week, great. But can't that person then access some component of the pension that he or she has been investing in at a pro rata type of level? I don't see why that's not an idea. It's probably just an implementation challenge rather than anything else. But surely we can fix that. We have computers these days. Okay, listen, folks, we're going to have to keep rolling on real quick because I noticed the time. We're well over. We have to get Mike back on to do some searching on the talent intelligence side. So we're going to have to say goodbye to Mariano and Tony here. Guys, thank you so much for your contributions. I know it was a really short time, and we will have to get you back for some more deep dive conversations in terms of where we're at. In fact, we should do a demographics kind of topic because we can't avoid it. I think recruiters have avoided it for a long time, and we're trying to fix it with remote or immigration or whatever. But the reality is we need to talk about what is happening in terms of our societies and the implications of this, because we're starting to see it. And if politically it becomes unacceptable to get immigration in, obviously everyone has seen sort of domestically it's very difficult politically for that to happen, then we need to essentially understand the wider context in order to remake that argument. So we'll do a demographics thing. Hopefully Mariano and Tony would be happy to join us for that. Okay, let's move on. Thanks a lot, guys. Mike, sorry, mate. We're going to bring you back in rapid, and we're going to do some searching. And Lee, by the way, I totally get what you're saying. I think it's, I hear the sentiment as well in terms of how you're reading it. I'm not there yet, but I feel like obviously all of us will be, and it must be very difficult to want to work, but then be screened out purely because of the maturity that you've gained. We've got to do a better job of figuring out how to fix that. Mike, listen, great to see you. Let's get on to some of these searches, mate. I wonder what you could show us. Why don't you share the screen and we'll just crack through some searches, I guess. See what it looks like.
Yeah, sure. Just to sort of add some context around kind of what I've done, we've taken an overall talent acquisition view of the market. Now we can drill right down into whether we're looking for a talent acquisition director, a sourcer, a recruiter consultant. We can be that prescriptive with Horsefly. Hung, you kind of suggested a few different locations. So we've taken that search looking at the US, Germany, UK, Netherlands, and France. And what we're able to provide is that supply versus demand, mean average salaries, upper quartile salaries as well. But we're talking today about trend analysis. And if I take the UK just in its own entirety, what we can actually see and what you're looking at right here is what has happened to demand in the market for TA over the last 3 years. So the people per job is, how many people are available for every job that's being advertised. And that's our kind of metric of looking at, how difficult it may be to hire or not to hire a certain skill set. But if we look at demand and we go back to sort of looking here at sort of July, 2020, we're in the midst of the pandemic here, and we've seen that demand has dropped, right off a cliff. And really it's, as everybody kind of saw, everybody was looking for a job, but then we come out of that pandemic and we see the demand reach its highest point over the last 3 years, probably going into sort of September and October of 2021. But there has been that slow decline. And, we're seeing that right away coming back down. But it's interesting when we talk about the demand for jobs, because we're looking at just before the pandemic, it's probably reaching similar scales to where we were. So yes, there is a quite clear shift, certainly in the UK from a TA space in terms of, what's actually happening. But that, and it's just been talked about earlier on with Tony as well. So, different sectors perform differently, different locations perform very differently as well. So if I flick across and say what's happened in London, specifically, London's had a higher, quicker drop in terms of demand for TA-based roles, over the sort of the last year or so. There is a slight uptick potentially there. One of the things we're looking at Horsefly as well is how we can start to predict what we think is going to be happening. But if we take London and say, okay, well, we can see London's following the trend of the UK. If I flick across and look at the northwest of England, then actually we can see that demand has remained relatively high. So, you will see pockets of what's happening in the market. And again, this can be applied to absolutely any skill, not even just by a northwest perspective. I can click into Manchester, for example, and I'm doing this real time, but I'm hoping that, my laptop and Wi-Fi is behaving itself. But we can look at how does Manchester compare from its demand compared to, say, Liverpool, for example. So actually, Liverpool's had slightly higher demand, the back end of last year compared to Manchester. even though there's less people. So all of these metrics, and when we look at people per job, we're looking at the number of people there are compared to the number of live job adverts. And actually, that's far more robust when we look at that compared to somewhere like London. But
That's
we can
so
do
interesting.
Any questions?
No,
the makeup of the.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say the makeup of there's probably a lot more of a tech focus in London than there is outside the M25. So that's one element of it. Another thing is talent acquisition as a job discipline is considerably immature compared to something like finance or sales or jobs which have been standard jobs within enterprise organizations for 40 years or 50 years. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is, or I wanted to ask about is, like, what do we think the correction is? Because when you looked at the overall in the UK, I mean, was the correction the point where it was all spiking, or is the correction the lowest point, or is there is a correction in here, but which is it?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to say, Adam, because again, I think all of the points that we certainly hear and talk about is that there was this huge spike in demand for TA resulted in overinflated salaries, and you see that higher demand for any skill set, not just TA, ultimately will rise, will cause an increase in salary. And I think, people touch, Helen, you said it earlier on, that there was talk of some absolutely enormous salaries. Adrian Thomas, who I think is also on today, we talk regularly with Adrian around that correction of, our salary starting to dampen slightly. I think, as demand drops, then, being able to sort of command very, very high salaries starts to become less ultimately.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, straight away, when you look at the distribution geographically, there is a strong argument for the leveling up argument. It's like, what? Why am I putting more of my recruiters in London when actually it could be that you've got different parts of the country, and this is basically in the pre-dip. You might want to place your people there, but of course now it's gone the reverse side. Then London might become a better place to try and do some hiring. I mean, this is a really interesting some gender breakdown. I didn't realize you had that type of data, Mike. Go ahead and have
we've got the gender breakdown. We've got ethnicity, which was released last year. And again, I mean, if I just come back to sort of the overall kind of, looking at the UK, and we get the ethnic breakdown of, what that looks like from an ethnicity perspective, and we're taking sort of classifications from government sources. But this is a project that Will and the team worked, over a number of years to make sure that we could deliver this, data and accurately. And again, the same applies to everything you're seeing here can be done on a macro or micro level. So and it goes right down to skills. But we can do comparative studies of what it looks like against the multiple locations. So again, if you wanted to start saying, okay, well, if I'm hiring, it's in pounds, I can put it in dollars and euros, whatever it may be, but we can start to see where it's more expensive. But not just to look at this from the US. I know we've got a global audience that's tuning in. This is looking at the same search, but from a US perspective. And actually we're seeing demand is rapidly on the rise there. So actually, is there a case that the US is slightly ahead of perhaps where the UK is in terms of either recovery or, the actual market itself, the economy as a whole, because we're seeing that upward shift of demand there as well.
Yeah, I think the UK has got some unique factors, hasn't it? So we've got some unique issues that exacerbate the underlying the non-UK stuff, I feel, which just really doesn't help us at all. It's actually very interesting to hear from Mariano saying similarly. It seemed that the atmosphere in continental Europe was more positive, reflected on just people with more work. So Brexit Britain, I'm afraid to say, is bottom of the table at this point. Okay, folks, we're coming really to really exhausting the amount of time on screen here. We've got a couple of questions here. By the way, we obviously haven't got to the questions. So I wonder whether you would, if you want to ask Mike anything, go and stick them in the comments section now, or actually no, put them in the ask a question section now, and I'll make sure Mike has a copy of those, and then he can go away, do those searches, and send you a quick report or something. I'm sure Mike would be cool with that. And we'll go from there. But okay, let's ask some of these questions anyway from Hannah. Hannah say, okay, might have missed it at the start, but do these metrics include agency TA roles? Asking the average salary seems too low for in-house. I guess that might have been directed to you, Mike, actually, having seen that salary. What do we mean by the recruiter job? Is it in-house or is it agency? And agency, obviously, you've got like base salary issues and stuff like this. Do you distinguish?
Yeah, we can do, again, just for the purpose of transparency. This was trying to look at the overall market. We're not drilling into kind of a talent acquisition manager or just a recruiter. Trying to look at this market as a whole. So yeah, you can. If you start drilling into director of talent acquisition, you're going to see a higher salary. But we can also filter on things like number of years experience in the marketplace. And again, the salary information we're pulling is pulled from a multitude of different places. We're not going to be adding in bonuses into that. This is base salary. And again, probably touched on by Emma, that we're seeing that compensation package earlier on today.
Yeah.
Earlier on, saying that those rewards and things like that are things that are starting to be added into overinflate packages that people get.
Yeah, very good. And by the way, I think, Julia, you're totally entitled to ask an irrelevant question. I'm going to answer that question. There's loads of companies that provide scheduling solutions for different types of calendars. You can talk about things like Chronify do this, Good Time do this. There's loads of solutions out there. Go check them out. I love it. Okay, listen, I think that's about. By the way, Mike, just share the link to Horsefly into the chat as well. Just make sure people can go and have a play and have a look at it. Sign up for a demo if any of that data is important for you. I do think at some point every organization that's seriously thinking about strategic hiring is going to need to have a talent intelligence solution of this type. You can see how important it is in terms of how you make your decisions. So get in touch with Mike and get in touch, in fact, with check out the stuff online yourself, and you'll see what's what. All right, Mike.
We got an answer. We got an answer, by the way, I think from Steve, maybe from Horsefly, around why Horsefly, the fastest insect.
The fastest insect.
It's and also the horseflies that we know here in the UK, the horrible ones that hang around, horses and bite you. It's actually
clegg. It's called a clegg in Scotland.
Yeah, there are other horseflies as well, which are the striped ones. They're actually the fastest insect, and you're right, Adam. They're pollinators, so they gather nectar. So there was that argument that they're one of the fastest insects and gather nectar. So we're fast at gathering data, but
hey,
also
listen,
we're unsuccessful. So yeah.
Hey, listen, I like the fact that you're giving love to non-cute animals. I think those guys need a bit of love. So, all right, Mike, listen, we've got to let you go, man. Thanks a lot for joining us. I will get you back at some other point. We are running well out of time, everybody, so we're going to have to close it there. I hope you've enjoyed the show, got some value from it. Make sure you follow the channel if you've enjoyed it. We're back next week. By the way, I'm back in the UK, so we'll be back at 2 p.m. GMT. Hopefully that's a little bit friendlier for our friends in the US. And we're going to be talking about the ethics of ChatGPT. Make sure you sign up for it. See you next week, folks. Dear, sorry for overrun, man. I mean, these days you got time. I mean, usually you rush me off, but I realized
I used to, didn't I? I used to be messaging you going, shut this down now. We've got to go. And I'm like, I'm now.
Manana. Yeah. But so, listen, I like the fact you're going and doing kind of consultancy work and sort of doing these focus groups and all the rest of it. I think it's a great idea. I love it. And by the way, people should take advantage of that, because it's kind of a rare moment in your kind of journey where you have that sort of freedom to be able to have conversations with folks. So that's really interesting, mate.
I'm doing a lot of stuff for free. I'm helping a lot of people, individuals and companies. And I'm learning from it as well, because I'm not doing it with I'm doing it with companies that are in our space, but they are maybe doing something that's slightly out with my area of expertise. So I'm learning from them as much as I am, helping them. So it's good.
Is this a journey? I mean, how long are you going to do it? I mean, did you want to convert it into a little mini gig? I mean, you could totally do. No, okay.
Nah. I'm starting a business in August. So
all right.
I'm in the meantime, just helping folk with stuff.
Helping
and yeah, that's it.
Good stuff.
Weekend?
Working. I mean, Brainfood is work, right? So over the weekend, it's actually quite intense. So I've got to finish the newsletter. I've got to do the second newsletter, and I've got to I'm basically back in the UK on Tuesday, I think. And I've actually got a presentation to build because I'm away to South Africa a week after that. So I've got to deliver a presentation there. I haven't done anything, so I've got to really, get my head down to that. So quite a busy weekend this time around, but that's normal. That's okay. How about you, man? What are you doing?
I'm playing rugby tomorrow. I've stepped up a level, unfortunately.
Have you really? You do realize this is the point where you do a comedy injury, mate. You tie your shoelaces. Oh shit, Achilles gone. 6 months out. It'll be like that.
No, I hope not. Playing rugby, watching rugby. Six Nations games on this weekend. Watching my son playing rugby on Sunday. Haven't got my daughter playing yet, or my wife, but
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. All right, enjoy that, mate. Thanks for joining.
Cheers.
I'll see you next week.
Bye.